Okay.
I pledge allegiance
To the
to the
flag
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 of
of
the United States of America
America
and
and
to
to
the
the
republic
republic
for
for
which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
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 under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
justice.
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Sorry, roll call.
Mr. Carson,
Here.
Dr. Fike, Dr. Fike, Mrs. Love, Mr. Polakowski,
Here.
Mrs. Raymond,
Here.
Mrs. Rhodes,
Here.
Mrs. Heather Smith,
Here.
Mrs. Kristen Smith,
Here.
Mrs. Williams.
Here. Just like to announce that we were in executive session for personnel matters. Mr. Mash, I believe you have some things to discuss before citizens' comments.
Yes, Mrs. Williams. Before we begin public comment, I've been instructed to read the district's press release about a pending personnel matter. The district is aware of the social media post that was recently brought to light and which appeared to have been made by a district teacher. First and foremost, the district rejects and condemns the views expressed in that social media post. The post does not represent the values of the Southmoreland School District. The district's administration has begun an investigation which will be conducted by the district solicitor. In accordance with state and federal laws, Pennsylvania public school employees are entitled to certain due process rights, which the district must follow and is following throughout this process. Pursuant to applicable law and collective bargaining agreement, the results of the investigation must be kept confidential while this matter is pending, and the district will have no additional comments or statements to the public while the investigation is continuing.
Mr. Mash, excuse me for 1 second. There's an awful lot of feedback coming through from somewhere. Can we just have everybody mute that is speaking right now? It's making it very difficult to hear.
I think it's coming off of the Galaxy. Who's the Galaxy A51? They need to mute.
I don't even see the option to mute that. Go ahead and proceed, and if we get feedback, I will place that one in the waiting room.
No disciplinary hearing has been held to date as the investigation is currently being conducted. While the investigation is pending, the employee has been placed on administrative leave. Again, no further comment will be forthcoming. It is understood that members of the public may be here tonight to discuss this topic, and you are certainly entitled to express your opinion. However, the board will not be making any further statements on this matter beyond the public statement that was just read, and we will not be responding to comments in any fashion tonight. You'll have an opportunity to state your views, but the board will not be responding to questions. We also want to remind members of the public of certain ground rules before we begin public comment. First, to be entitled to speak, you must be a resident or taxpayer of the district. So at the outset, please state your name and address for the record. There is a 5-minute limit on public comment, so speakers must state their views within that time. And if you go over your time, the district will be required to mute you. If you are part of a group, consider appointing one person to be your spokesperson. Most importantly, remember that the district is a community of learning, and we are all responsible to set good examples for the district students. Do not use profanity in your comments or use inappropriate language. Please be respectful and professional in your comments. If the meeting becomes unruly or uncontrolled, the board president We'll adjourn the meeting to another date and continue public comment at that time. That is all, Mrs. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Masha. Citizens' comments?
We do have several. Do we have a Christine Emmanuelson?
Yes, sorry, I had to get unmuted.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Southmoreland School Board and Administration. My name is Christine Emmanuelson. I reside at 396 Orchard Avenue in Scottdale. I have one student in the 7th grade. I would first like to commend the staff that have been working so hard behind the scenes to ensure our students and staff have been provided the best learning environment they are able to. And to all the staff that have had to learn new models of teaching over the past year. I did respond to the survey, and I do feel that it's time for our students to return to face-to-face instruction in the classroom. Westmoreland County and Fayette County have both seen decreases in daily cases, bringing our 7-day average in the last week well below the limit to remain in the below the substantial spread category. I realize we need to look at 2 weeks worth of data, but I was unable to pull up the previous 7-day period. I can see from the overall state and local maps that cases are trending down statewide. I hope this is due to the accessibility of vaccinations and the continued diligence of people wearing masks, washing hands, and being smart about when and where they go in public spaces. As a side note, I was participating in a town hall meeting for work today, and Dr. Fauci announced that today that 33 million people in the United States have received at least the first dose of their vaccination. However, I know that the board will vote and honor the data received through the survey and through the state classification of the counties of moderate or substantial. Tonight, I would like to speak to you regarding the accommodations made for our students when they return to the brick and mortar building. In the fall, students were required to carry their personal items to include books, binders, water, and lunch in their backpacks throughout the day. I wrote to Ms. Kuhar regarding the increased strain on students to carry a backpack that exceeded the weight limitations of healthy ergonomics. She agreed that even her child was experiencing back pain and added stress. However, the school would not allow students to access lockers. It is winter. As students return to the buildings, it will be more important for them to have access to secure locations for coats, backpacks, lunches, etc. I personally feel that providing lockers as a space for students to secure their coats and other soft surface items will decrease the germs being carried from classroom to classroom, especially as coats and backpacks on the floor in the classrooms may also contribute to tripping hazards and egress issues in the case of an emergency. In the event that our students return to face-to-face instruction and lockers are not provided, the school should expect a reasonable accommodation for my child under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. My child was diagnosed with scoliosis 6 years ago, and we have been monitoring her regularly. In July of 2020, there had been no significant change. A few weeks ago, at a 6-month checkup, her orthopedic doctor, upon consulting x-rays, is now requiring medical intervention due to a significant progression in the curvature of her spine. I will admit she is certainly within the window age range that we have been watching for when most cases of scoliosis change. But I can't help to wonder what impact carrying a 13-pound backpack on her 80-pound body has had on her spine. Ergonomists and the National Safety Council recommend a backpack should weigh no more than 10% of their body weight. For an 80-pound student, that is 8 pounds. From a previous conversation, I understand that students should not have any books, but I would ask the school to validate and to understand the weight of what students are actually being asked to carry all day, every day. Other school districts are still providing lockers for their students. My sister is a teacher in another district. Their school has many grade levels that share main corridors, and they have modified their bell schedule to stagger the class periods by grade to decrease students in the hallway at the same time. This allows those students to utilize lockers and also decreases the quantity of students in the corridors at the same time. When our students return to school, I hope the school board and administration will consider the added strain on our students to carry belongings and care that needs to be taken to keep pathways clear. It seems most reasonable to provide lockers. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Stephanie Geyer.
Hi, I'm here.
Go ahead, honey.
Okay. My name is Stephanie Geyer. I live at 565 Bessemer Road, Mount Pleasant, which is in East Huntington Township. I have 2 girls, one in 5th grade and one in 7th grade. First, I would like to address the board members. I was appalled at the last meeting to see how many of you were looking away from your computer, looking down and not paying attention during citizens' comments. I understand during topical discussions, you do have documents to review, but that is not the case during citizens' comments. We are the people that elected you and we are the people you represent. The very least you could do is actually appear to care about what people have to say. This board is a joke. It has become the laughing stock of the area. People from other districts tune in just to see the spectacle that this meeting often turns into. These meetings are completely unprofessional and we should not have to be embarrassed as a community by our school board. Secondly, to the administration, from everything I've seen this year, I lack confidence in your leadership abilities in this school. You're unable, especially Mr. Masha, to provide basic questions, answers when asked. You should know in your sleep how each school is implementing virtual education. You should know how and when teachers are offering live instruction and how students are responding. There seems to be a lack of any type of standard as far as virtual instruction is concerned. Is there a standard? There should be a document outlining the expectations from each teacher, and they should be held accountable to that standard. This standard should also outline how Google Classroom should be organized, so they're all the same and easy to navigate. My 5th grader has both ELA and social studies in the same Google Classroom. I can barely figure out what she's supposed to do daily, so I don't know how a 10-year-old is expected to. There's a year's worth of assignments sitting in that Google Classroom. There's not one administrator in any of my 5th graders' 9 Google Classrooms. And in my 7th graders, I do give Mrs. Kuhar credit. She is in 5 out of 7 of my students' Google Classrooms. Some school districts require there to be an administrator in each classroom to hold teachers accountable. Mr. Masha, you should be able to provide the board and public with details of how many students are logging in each day and how many are not, how many are receiving failing grades, and what your plan is to remediate these students. Do you even have a plan? It should keep you up at night knowing you have students who otherwise would be excelling in their classes receiving failing grades. We're in unprecedented times and our students should not be failing because of their school administration's lack of preparedness. Are you investing in the best technological programs to offer our teachers to use? Are you offering ongoing education on how to use different means of technology to keep students engaged? Are you requiring regular grade level meetings to brainstorm different avenues to keep our students motivated? It's mind-boggling that all we're using is a free Google Classroom platform, which is antiquated technology. I've not seen anything new introduced since last spring, and we were promised a better instructional model. As far as a return to hybrid, kids were not made to sit alone in their bedrooms learning on a computer. The education offered on off days is a joke. There's no reason why live instruction can't be synchronously provided to students at home on their off day. We all do carry a video camera around in our pockets. Other districts in our area capable of making this happen, is there a viable reason Southmoreland cannot? Again, there needs to be a standard provided for what students work on during their off day. A worksheet or two is not a viable education for any child. Hybrid is basically providing 2 to 3 days off a week for our kids. Our students continue to get the short end of the stick with the disappointing educational models being provided. This administration and board spent months discussing which copier machines to purchase, when perhaps they should have been spent talking about how to train our teachers better, preparing the buildings for a full return, or purchasing tools to better help our teachers in the virtual classroom. Unfortunately, when we do return to hybrid, many of the fully virtual students will no longer be provided with live instructions because their teachers are going to be teaching in a classroom. Parents were led to believe in the beginning that that would be the case. They would be receiving live instruction if they went fully virtual. Southmoreland would not be in a budget crisis over their large cyber school payments had they just instilled confidence in the parents that you would provide a quality virtual education. Southmoreland misled parents and let down the students with this fully virtual educational model. The entire summer was available to figure this out, and it seems like everything was thrown together at the last minute at the expense of our children. A return to hybrid means our kids are going to even receive less instruction than they currently do. Lastly, this district has not provided any parent with the confidence that our children are being properly educated like they deserve. To name a few, Connellsville has returned to 4-day-a-week in-person instruction, and Latrobe stands to start 5-day-a-week on Monday. We're just now discussing a return to hybrid, and they're returning to full 5-day instruction. It's unfair to our kids who are not thriving in a virtual environment to be forced to struggle daily because of your lack of preparedness. There is a choice for a reason. For those who aren't comfortable with in person, they choose virtual. And if you are comfortable, then we should be offered in person.
Thank you, Mrs. Geyer. Your time's up.
Jill Cedar.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, or actually good evening. My name is Jill Cedar. I live at 601 South Chestnut Street. I have 3 children in the school. I have one in 2nd grade, one in 6th grade, and one in 8th grade. So I had sent an email on Tuesday to the board and Mr. Masha asking why Southmoreland is not live streaming on the at-home days of the hybrid model. The board members who responded to me agreed this should be happening, and I've asked the same question for almost a year now. As we all remember, last spring was a disaster. Mr. Masha also responded with answers that I don't understand what he's saying. The first was, I can assure everyone this issue has been a continual conversation with the administration team and the SEA leadership. We will present the options. Please keep in mind that we want to be cautious about increasing the number of students that may be negatively impacted. Don't understand. And very worried about student failures. Again, don't understand. These answers don't make even any sense. I don't understand how either of those comments are related to live virtual teaching. Mr. Masha, Southmoreland is failing. Kids who are normally A and B students are failing classes, and you're failing these students. Look around at teachers and board members who don't have enough faith in the district to keep their own children in it, and I don't blame them at all. Kids need a full-time education. While I believe most of it should be in the classroom, that doesn't appear to be an option anytime soon in Southmoreland. Please stop making excuses, get cameras in the classrooms so that the kids can learn every day, and stop giving these kids half an education. It was a breakthrough to have live instruction when the schools closed before the holidays. Please don't make the hybrid model take another step backwards and shut them out of learning on their days at home. Yes, we have some awesome teachers in this district. Let them do their job, teach day to day rather than having them repeat lessons to the AB group. We all need help getting through these difficult times. Look around at other districts, take advice from the intermediate unit, listen to your parents and tax papers, put a plan in place to get cameras in the classrooms immediately and have them moving forward to get kids back in the classrooms full time, whatever that may be. Have a plan. There are ways to do better, and we have to do better for our students. Our kids are paying this price for our district, not having the steps to get up to speed and be prepared. If it's our union, please have them on a call to listen to parents. Thank you to the board members who replied to my email. I appreciate that, and for the opportunity to voice my concerns. If I haven't hit my time limit, I'm happy to hang on the line until Mr. Masha explains to the community why we're not having the hybrid days live stream, when businesses everywhere and school districts right around us are doing it. It can't be that hard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mrs. Tarson, do we have any other comments?
Nicola Rear.
Mr. Pushkar, do we know who that Galaxy A51 is?
There's no way for me to tell who these people are.
Okay.
I thought that probably might be Mrs. O'Rear.
Can we go with Mr. Jan Kiefer?
Yes. Excuse me, I'm Jan Kiefer of East Huntington Township, 61 years old. And I don't have children in the school district, but I've followed the school district closely for years and years and years. So this whole COVID thing is going to take us down if we continue to ignore what the mainstream media, what the mainstream internet are feeding. we know that when the students come back, they're going to be wearing masks. We know that advanced stage lung cancer is linked with mask wearing, and it'll be double linked probably with double mask wearing. There was testimony before the U.S. Senate by America's most credentialed physicians that early treatment success rates above 60% had been demonstrated for a long time. And that no one's deconstructed this in 3 months. So that puts our whole COVID case on a different platform. So I'm sure Mr. Mash is going to come back tonight and say there were so many cases. I've asked for definition of this case word. So I want it tonight when it's used. If a board member doesn't know it, then they need to ask it for the public. But does that mean one symptom and one positive PCR test? What is a case, and what are the deaths confirmed by the presence of a live virus or the PCR test and one symptom? And I've asked other questions around that statistic also that I'd like to see you use as a board with an intelligent conversation. This survey that I saw on Facebook, although I didn't have children, I would have liked to have known about it, but it's an either or survey. It's this or that. It's very diametric, but it just exposes how narrow the groupthink is not to open up your options. It was one or the other, but we cannot take another month, not another week, to enact a plan to get the teachers out from behind the screen and into the scene of the neighborhoods. They can meet up with children in clusters outside. They can start learning pods. They can have micro schools. I've traveled around the world. I've seen how societies educate their children under these conditions, and we're not going back to brick and mortar 100% for everybody. That's just not in the cards. I'm not saying it should or shouldn't be, but we have to accept that that's where we are, and that's where we're going to be for a long time. And so students could find community support if they get out into these neighborhood meetings with their teachers. They could, it could just be the way education happens from now on. The screen is not an answer for me. It's just nothing but eye strain and electromagnetic field pollution. I'd like to be called on at the end of the period of the meeting tonight to finish my comments. Public schools are the #1 cause of deficiency in children who are starved of being outdoors. Public schools are the natural body to provide this type of schooling. If you don't, a charter school is going to come in and take over. Don't sign any teacher contract until these new directions are included in options. We need to go to 12-month schooling. Teachers are going to have to get out with their snowsuits, and we're going to have to give up the Chromebooks as a constant companion. This is a low budget program with models around the world to be considered. We can't just look at Mount Pleasant because Mount Pleasant's looking at us. We have to really step up and use our experience. And if you would, let me see, how much more time do I have?
You have a minute.
All right. I'm still here. I want to pick my best thought. So if we get 2 successive moderate levels, break down what that means and tell us again, what is a case, and then tell us why all these this information that we're getting on COVID is only what you want to say about it, and you won't open up any of your committees, any of your wellness committees or your task force committees. They should all be open to the public, and you should when you go to the supervisors meeting, you come back with their information. You should come back with that recording. If you don't come back with a recording, your information is worthless, or worse than worthless to me, because it's probably detrimental. I'll finish at the end of the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicola
Mrs. Tarson.
Rear. I'm sorry, Nicola Rear.
I'm here.
Go ahead.
Do you hear me? Okay. Hi, good evening, you guys. My name is Nicola Rear. I reside at 1155 Valley View Drive in Scottsdale on the Fayette County side. I have a senior and a 9th grade in the high school, and a 9th grader in the high school. So I'm coming on here. I wanted to discuss about the decision or a vote rather that was rendered at the last board meeting. I thought personally it was absolutely baffling to sit and listen and watch something so discriminating and so segregating to not only be voted upon, but then have enough votes to pass. It truly blows my mind. Last time I checked, it was against the law to discriminate, no matter, race, age, sex, whichever. But I don't think that it was fair putting only a certain amount of children back in the school and not allowing the rest of them to go back. So yeah, I know that I'm pretty sick and tired, and I'm pretty sure that the rest of the district's public or the parents of this district, we're kind of tired of watching and listening to you all just spew out the state's rhetoric about what the 9 of you should be doing with our children's education. When we, the parents, have spoke up, I know I've been a serious thorn in the side, and which a lot of parents have, about telling you what we want for our children's education, and that's going back to a brick and mortar. Let me find my place. Sorry. I mean, honestly, these kids should be back 5 days a week. They should have been back 5 days a week like months ago. Like they need better than what's been given to them. And I also want to talk about especially these seniors. Like, I feel so bad for them. Like, how would you all feel if this was your senior year? Would you all just be okay with sitting back and listening to, we appreciate your patience and continued understanding in these difficult times? Like, how is that even fair anymore? Like, these seniors especially have lost the last year of their schooling. I mean, it's gone. It's never coming back, and then they have 3.5 months left. We're just now getting back to AB schedule, if possible, if that's what apparently if y'all decide. And they have 3.5 months of schooling left. And then you're going to dictate how they're going to have graduation. So what are we doing here anymore? Like, why does it come to February of 2021 and this is what we're just now deciding on? I mean, it's you all got to stop playing political games with our children's education. It's out of hand anymore. I mean, you send out these surveys. Do you listen to these surveys? Because the last time that we as a public or we as parents or we as students sent in our survey to you guys off the district's website, we never even got like the results from that. Are you guys going to give the public the results from this one? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. What's the point anymore? You don't listen. What's the point of sending out a survey if you all don't hear us? And we're screaming, literally. I mean, I know you all haven't been handed like, a fairy tale, but this is out of hand anymore. Like, absolutely out of hand, It doesn't make any sense. I just really hope that you all, I guess, find it in your heart, I don't know, to hear us and to listen to us, because these kids deserve so much better than what they're being handed, especially these seniors. My goodness. I mean, they've lost out on every possible memory of their senior year. No football games, no nothing. No senior dress up day, no nothing. It's such a shame, and I guess the last thing I'm going to ask for, I know, Mr. Masha, you had said that you're not going to be addressing, or anybody's going to be addressing what's been going on with one of the teachers, but trying to figure out, when is there going to be a public apology? Because I know there's a lot of people that are somewhat waiting on that, I mean, this not only falls on that particular teacher, this falls on y'all as a district. And I understand that you can't be forthcoming with whatever's going on because it's still an investigation, but something needs to be said, I don't know. But I think that's pretty much all I have. I just hope you all listen to us parents, or listen to us as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Tarson, are there any other comments?
There's a letter to be read from a Miss Rachel Fry of Roughdale, PA. She has 3 children currently in Southmoreland School District. 1 child has an IEP. Students need to physically attend school in person. Our school mission says high quality learning for all. Last meeting, you voted to return to in-person instruction, K-5 autistic support students, and those students spending most of their day in special education classes. I ask that you respect, honor all students and families, and those who want to return to in-person instruction do so. Not all students can learn by sitting in front of a screen. The superintendent followed the recommendation of the CDC in returning K-5. COVID is not going away in the near future, so planning is the key. In the 2 months, the district has been fully remote virtual. What has been done to enhance mitigation efforts at the middle school and the high school levels to prepare for students to return to in-person instruction? Schools not identified as hotspots for COVID. We are a small community, small rural community. We should be able to put a solid mitigation plan into action that allows students to safely return to in-person instruction. What are school district statistics for the 2nd grading period this year, which was virtual learning, against 2nd grading period of last year, which was in person? How many students failed 1 class, 2 classes, or more classes? A breakdown by school and or grade level. Students who are failing, does the district plan to help aid those students and families? Are students going to be offered summer school courses free of charge? Are we going to provide them with in-person instruction in the summer? Are you going to offer after-school tutoring if we resume in-person instruction later this school year? Reasons for returning to in-person instruction. Some students require in-person instruction and cannot attend to a screen. Some students do not have an adult at home that can help with their schoolwork or with using the technology you provided, the Chromebooks, not to mention internet issues. Consistent inconsistencies with virtual classes. Some teachers teach the whole time, some just post links to videos, others keep them on 10 minutes. So keeping track of time in classes is hard when the transition is not one class directly into the next. Whereas in classes, it is hard when the transition is not one class directly on after the next, whereas the person allows for smooth transitions between classes due to a bell system. Students may be experiencing isolation, depression due to the pandemic. Socialization, school is the only opportunity some students have to engage with others their age. The ability to see students allows teachers and staff to identify and report hunger, abuse, and neglect, which may be the only way to identify when seeing a student in person. Students may have other unmet needs as well that we are unaware of because no one is seeing these students in person. That's all.
Thank you, Mrs. Tarson.
Sure.
New business, school reopening.
Mr. Pushkar, are you present?
Yes,
Can you put that document up for me, please?
give me 1 second.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pushkar. I know there have been a number of questions and comments concerning the direction that the district will be going. I think it's important that we take one step back, first of all, to review the rationale for why we went with the AB model. In an AB model, students would be split into 2 groups, alternating each day on a 6-day cycle between distance and in-person instruction. it is important to note that no model under consideration offers a perfect solution. Of the possible choices, it is believed the AB model provides the best solution for student instruction where a split must occur. Furthermore, the division of students will center on households for the day students attend, meaning all of the students in a household will attend brick and mortar on the same day and complete distance learning on the following day. There have been conversations concerning 5-day hybrid live instruction. We would like to discuss the advantages and challenges of what is currently taking place and what instruction would look like moving forward. We have met as an administrative team, and I am going to ask my administrative team to join in when they feel it's appropriate. Number one, the AB is the best model. This plan most effectively works to fit within the confines of our educational and staffing constraints. Generalized comparisons to other districts often fail to recognize the staffing and technology components that contribute to the operational execution of these districts' educational models. And before I would go further, I would ask if there are any comments from any of the administrators on that statement. Obviously not.
So I just want to kind of elaborate a little bit on that. Sometimes when we're looking at neighboring districts, they may have a larger number of students who are going virtual. And so for them to have kids in the building, they will have fewer kids coming back than we might.
Yeah, if I can add to that sentiment, at the outset of the school year, we had a survey in which 80% had indicated that they would come back to live instruction. And under the 80% of our total student population, it'd be very difficult to implement the mitigation strategies based on the levels of staffing that we do have from K through 12. And really, those have to be considered and look really at the gritty details of what schools are using with their staffing regarding how they're staffing their classrooms. And their models, they're not all cut of one cloth. We do have examples that are often brought up from neighboring districts, Yawk being one, and 65% of their student body wish to return. And that is considerably less than 80%, obviously. Therefore, they were able to safely mitigate and follow the guidelines of 6 feet by having the number or appropriate number of students that would fit in within the classroom. That was a very difficult challenge for us to overcome. And I think that's kind of the general gist of that statement.
Mr. Clare, I think you got cut off.
My apologies. Yeah, I think I was just similar to what Mr. Kravchuk said. I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that sometimes we're similar to those districts and sometimes we're not. And so their circumstances might be a little different from ours, and that can affect our ability to do something similar because we may not share the same circumstances. But I certainly respect the fact that there are districts who are finding new and different ways to address problems. I mean, I think this is a time where we have to be creative, and it looks like people are continuing to try to find solutions to a very difficult situation.
Okay. The advantages, I think currently right now, we have a very good situation, educational model that's taking place in the elementary K to 5 sector. Students in K5 have a current virtual option available to them. They have in-person instruction with their teachers, but there are also teachers that, because of scheduling abilities, that are able to meet and provide virtual instruction for those students or those families that have chosen the virtual option. That is a difficult task in the secondary level. And I think looking forward, we have some work to do in trying to make the 6 through 12 virtual option a possibility, and we are working on that, and we'll address that here shortly. But Dan, do you have anything? Dan Clare, do you have anything to add about currently right now what is taking place in the elementary sector? Was I correct in stating that there is a virtual option that is provided on a daily basis to students within your school?
Yeah, so we have virtual teachers each grade level who are dedicated to providing that kind of instruction for families that choose it. And then we have teachers who are working in person in our AB system. So we found a way to do both of those things. There's always more that we want to do and always ways that we want to improve. But those two models are models that have worked so far, and we've worked ourselves to try to find ways to improve them. And you learn by doing, right? We're learning as we go what the best ways to do those things are. And we certainly appreciate anytime we can get feedback from someone who says, hey, here's what we're seeing from our side. So again, I appreciate that. I've had some folks reach out to me with ideas, and we take them all under advisement. I promise you, if you write to me, I'm going to get back to you. So, but yes, Mr. Mash, to answer your question, that's correct.
When we went to the virtual, all virtual model, remote model at the middle school level, Mrs. Kuhar, we were able to schedule teachers into a virtual setting. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how that was available and made possible?
Correct. So when we went fully virtual, I had to develop a new schedule so that we could offer live instruction to the students that chose the fully virtual model. However, with returning to the AB hybrid, that would not be possible because of the teacher schedules. So those students that chose the fully virtual SOLA model at the middle school would no longer have live instructional available to them.
Now, when you stipulate SOLA, we're talking about our own online students, not SOLA per se as through the IU?
Correct. That was the change in the name at the beginning of the school year with the SOLA. At the middle school, it is with our teachers, our curriculum, the same work as the students that are there in person. But again, because of the limited staffing we have, I'm not able to offer live instruction to the students guaranteed every day based on the teacher schedules when the students are back in the building.
Okay, thank you. The second bulleted point, the current model is the most consistent plan for our district. We have tried to be consistent throughout the entire school year. I know that there are districts that have made various decisions in the way they were approaching their instruction. Those districts from time to time have been placed in compromising positions. I at no point will ever be disparaging to any other district, but I know that they have faced challenges when they have brought their students back to some extent where there are large groups of students placed in a single location because of circumstances presented. There's also districts that have had numerous shutdowns because of the outbreak or the incidence of COVID that had broken out either within their student population or their staffing population. I think it's important to note that every time a school is shut down because of those circumstances, it does infringe upon or compromise plans and arrangements that parents and a lot of times the students themselves are encountering. So we would like to try, we wanted to try to be as consistent as possible to mitigate and minimize the number of potential problems that parents would have with those shutdowns. I don't know if anyone else has anything else that they would like to add to that.
Just quickly, I would also add that the AB model provided us with more teacher and student together time in the school. Some of the other models that we looked at and we considered would cause long gaps between when a student and teacher would see each other and then when they would see each other again, depending on where that day for deep cleaning was placed in the schedule or how often they were meeting. One of the things that we learned in our time talking over the summer with groups that came in as we were trying to get ready to open and make some decisions, both teachers and parents, and I imagine students would say this too, that they wanted to see their teachers as much as possible. And so that AB model doesn't solve all of our problems, but it did address one of the more important ones, which is seeing teachers.
In that interpersonal relationship with the teacher and student, the student to teacher ratio allows for, we believe, the highest level of interaction between the students and the teachers. The AB model provides for half of the students to be able to, when I say half, I'm just characterizing, there are other individuals that have made the choice to go virtual, but it allows for the potential half number of students to be able to be present in the building, which allows for, and I think anyone that has experienced any of the interactions or the families, parents that children have come home and explained that, I think it does allow for greater ability for our teachers to interact with our students at a higher level. I don't know if there's any other comments that our administrative team would like to add to that.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Masha. I know that this is tough because this summer we went through a lot of weighing these options, and I was working with a committee of teachers and some community members. And I think to preface it, I should say that all hybrid half-kid models are unstudied and unfounded and unproven, right? And even Patton and PDE, they were leaving leeway into how we did it because they didn't even recommend 2-1-2 versus every other day. So when we were confronted with the problem of having half of our kids, because that was the context, I know there's some other people who don't like that even, but still, when we were confronted with having to reduce to half, we chose an alternating model because it'd be a 5-day stretch in a lot of the other 2-1-2 programs where you might have students Monday, Tuesday, and then there's that long disconnect. We didn't like that. But personally, I'm married to a second grade teacher in another district in the county who's doing some things similar to what some people want. So I know how easy it can be to cherry pick some things from other districts and say, wish it upon ourselves. But these internal frustrations are happening everywhere. And one of the things when we looked at this summer that I truly felt passionately about was, I don't know what great hybrid teaching is, but I know what great teaching is. And we have rubrics and we have models for that. We have a Danielson model that evaluates our teachers. And we know that student engagement, we know the formative assessment, we know the question and answering techniques. We know that connection is vital. So when we looked at doing an alternating model and not having live camered in, one, we did have a tech issue. We didn't have enough computers. We had an outdated computer fleet we gave away. We couldn't get one-to-one in kids' hands. And secondly, we felt it was important that teachers in that moment when they had kids in front of them, the most important thing they could do was teach and be teachers. And the most important thing they could do was have that normalcy. Why would we fight to create a new system to bring kids in if it was going to be something that we felt was superficial? And that's what I feel managing an online / in-person course would be. I think recording lessons and moving forward, there's an equity issue for kids. Teachers aren't going to be able to do formative assessment online and in person. I think they wind up reteaching. I know that's what my own wife experiences because there are kids who unfortunately won't engage in that off time. But with all that being said, I don't know. This hasn't been studied. Hybrid instruction hasn't been. I can tell you right now, our first grade Acadian scores came back from the mid-year benchmark and they grew almost 20 points, almost to pre-pandemic standards. Part of my job, our job is to unpack why and tap into those things that are going on well. So, but to give some thought process as to why we made some of these choices, that's why. I think we wanted teachers to teach and to be able to teach. I have a second grade student in the district who does full virtual, and having a dedicated teacher is why she's in the district. And if it was a model like other districts where she would be tapped into a video like other districts are doing, like my wife's, I don't know that we'd want to continue. So I just want to be careful cherry picking what other districts have and do. It's a difficult rabbit hole to go down.
Thank you, Mr. Novikov. Oh, I would like to stress that they're really, a hybrid model is not the ideal instructional opportunity for our students. Pre-pandemic, we would love to go back to March 12th of 2020, when everything was, we were in school as we've all become familiar with through our lives. Obviously, in-person instruction, every one of our administrative team were teachers, so we all believe passionately in instruction to the highest degree in interacting with our students. No excuses meant, but the pandemic kind of changed the game, and we're trying to make the best of the situation. I think there's a lot of things that we're going to be doing here, and we'd like to outline some of the possibilities. But another point is that the current model allows for the safety standards to be imposed by the state to follow the highest degree. I think it's really important to understand that the state still has imposed restrictions on social distancing. We do not want to compromise the safety and welfare of any of our students or staff. I know that there is a big effort in many of our citizens are becoming vaccinated, and I hope that's going to continue to the highest degree possible. And I believe that moving forward, that is going to be a very valuable tool in trying to get things back to some sense of normalcy. But our classrooms, we have to be very cognizant that they are not situated to allow for the appropriate 6 feet of spacing. And what is taking place in other districts, once again, I will not be disparaging to other districts, but I know that within our district, we cannot meet the 6 feet of distancing. And I don't know if anyone else would like to add anything to the conversation.
Yeah, I want to add, in 2009, 2008-9 school year, or it may have been the 7-8 school year, when I entered into administration, Southmoreland High School had 4 physical education teachers. 4. Currently, I have 2 physical education teachers. So my flexibility in trying to adhere to Chapter 4 standards to what are dictated and mandated by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for physical education with half the staff, and yes, our numbers are smaller. However, guidelines are not smaller. I could be bringing gym classes back with 100 kids in them. And that's 50 kids per teacher at one point. So this is what we're talking about in terms of staffing confinements, that it's very simple to say, well, it's happening here, but I want to also take a look at how many PE teachers do they have and how do they fit within their systems. In 1999, when they redesigned the Southmoreland High School building, we lost approximately 200 seats in our cafeteria. With 1/2 of our student population attending under the hybrid model, I don't have enough space to fit half the kids per day with 3 lunches. Even if I added a 4th, I would still need to have a outflow of area, which is the library, in which I have almost packed as well. So because we don't have a huge cafeteria space in comparison to what we used to have. It's hard for us if, let's say, we disregard any of the standards and say, well, everybody's going back. And then let's say 80% of our students come back and they show up. I won't have 6 feet of space between 80% of my students in my cafeteria during the 3 lunches. Even if I added a 4th lunch, I still won't have the 6 feet of space, because even during half, we had complete capacity in our cafeteria, and we had complete capacity in our library for each lunch period. And we couldn't even hold a gym class. We would probably have to bring somebody in to manage a 3rd section of gym every period just to make something like that occur. So with the hybrid model, we were very well able to manage how that happens. You would say, well, you have 533 kids. What it also isn't ever configured into these conversations is that I have CWCTC schedule to work with, which means if I have 80 kids going to CWCTC, I have to follow their guideline. So you would think logically, I would just split the class or split all the kids between 2. So now I have 250 some kids to deal with, but that's not always the case, because I may have 40 that go to tech and have to come back at a certain time. And because of that, you may see a 7th period PE class that has 100 kids in it. Why? Because they only have 4 spots in their schedule to make it happen. So we're not trying to complicate things here everywhere, but there are a lot of constraints that aren't often very visible within the confines of how a school works. What we don't often talk about in comparison to Connellsville, they don't have to deal with tech at all. Why? They have their own comprehensive tech program. None of their kids in their high school go to CTC. They don't go to a tech. They go to tech all day. That's where they go. Subsequently, the administration at Connellsville High School does not have to work within 4 periods. That principal now has to work with 8 periods in which they can schedule kids within the confines of their schedule, and we don't have those luxuries. So I'm just trying to point out where the complexity comes from. That, and I want to preface all this with the best thing that we all feel. And I want to preface this so it doesn't seem like I'm trying to, say things aren't possible. We always want kids to be in the buildings. We absolutely always do. But in following safety guidelines, these are the constraints that we were up against, and based on the best data and our best knowledge of what was happening, that is why we had to do it. And that is why it is, in our opinion, the best model moving forward to follow that particular guideline.
I think the only thing I'd add, and I don't want to belabor too, was just I want to speak up for some of my favorite 6 teachers in the world are the only 6 itinerant teachers we have K-5. We have 6. Itinerant teachers provide general ed teachers their preps. So many of the districts that get cited, we do work with them and talk to them. They utilize their itinerants. Before the ERIP a few years ago, we had more itinerants. We could have added additional prep periods for teachers to do some more creative solutions. We don't have a single period available. There are 7 home rooms in K and 1 and 6 and 2 through 5. Those 6 teachers manage 900 students, virtual and in-person and hybrid, and work duties and help function our buildings. And that's a huge area of leverage that so many of these programs have. And those 6 individuals are just those 6 individuals. They are a very, 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 very thin team. They're an amazing team. But that's something where we only have, so our teachers have 40 minutes for a prep period. There's nothing extra to get. And if you've ever taught, I mean, I never taught hybrid. I taught, special ed in 4th grade, and I can tell you 40 minutes, my wife's grading papers right now. So we don't have any extra time either. There's 6 for over 850 students.
Thank you. We were also charged, I'm sorry, Mr. Clare, were you going to add something?
No, Alex kind of covered what I was going to say. I just think it's important that, when we're adding extra things that we find the time in the day to do it. And right now, we are pressed to the max. And so it is a challenge. And I just think that it's an important thing to point out. And doesn't mean that we say we can't do anything, but I think it should be recognized that that's a change. And with change comes some complication. So.
All districts were charged with signing off on an attestation form. That attestation form mandates districts to follow the masking process procedures, the social distancing procedures, and to respond to the number of COVID cases. There are specific protocols that must be handled and dealt with whenever we have designated cases of COVID. By signing that attestation form, we agreed to follow those guidelines. If we do not agree to follow those guidelines, there is a clause in that attestation form that indicates that districts would not be permitted to participate in sports and extracurriculars. So we've heard numerous times in the beginning of the school year the importance of sports and extracurriculars, and we too firmly believe that those are wonderful opportunities for our students to be engaged in. We do not want to limit the ability of our students to be able to participate in any of those activities. Once again, I offer any other administrators to add any input to that. And before we move into our comparison of failure rates for the 19-20-20-21, I think it's important that we believe right now that there's an importance of meaningful activities on the alternative day. Does that mean that there are incidents or cases where possibly instruction might not be as normal as in past, but there are various instructional strategies. Sometimes there is a presentation of content on one day, and the next day the teacher might meet with the students to summarize and define additional areas that they would like to be worked with, which can tell that student going off and working. It is dependent on, and once again, I put quotation marks around the meaningful activities. We do not just want to assign work to students for the sake of filling out a packet and submitting it. We want any work that is done on those off days to be significant to the students' learning. And once again, I open the floor for any administrators to add additional comments.
I just want to say very quickly that it's a learning curve for teachers, just like it is for our students and for our families. And I think that we are continuing to get better at it and improve. Doesn't mean that everything we do is perfect. I think we learn by doing, but our best asset, I think, is our teachers. They're the best thing that we have to provide. And I think they're doing a really good job of trying not to create things that are just, ancillary items, that they're meaningful and important. And we're learning as we do. And so I think we continue to get better at it, but there's always ways that we can improve. And I certainly think that our teachers will tell you that too. Hey, they're finding new ways and better ways as they go, because this is new to us. Teaching this way and not having kids in front of us every day all the time is a challenge. And everybody knows we would prefer to have them all with us, but if we're respecting the boundaries that we've been given, then we have to be creative with the schedule and the timing that we have. And I think I can speak for my staff because I see them a lot. They continue to find new and creative ways to solve problems or try to solve problems and then walk it back when they aren't successful and find new ways. And, I haven't been in a classroom since 2005, so I don't know that I have a lot of great teaching strategies for this, but I'm surrounded by people who do. And we really need to allow them to continue to work on it and grow with it and listen to the ideas that the parents are sharing. I think that's important too. They're seeing it from a different angle. So I just think it's important to recognize that it's ever changing and difficult, and the rules change.
And I'd just like to add, Mr. Masha, that in the traditional brick and mortar prior to March 13th, teachers do not necessarily teach for the 45-minute class period. They are assigning work for students to complete, checking in with them, and that was the purpose, at least at the middle school, for the teachers having their Zooms open during this virtual instructional model. And for the couple of complaints that I have received, I reach out to those teachers to be sure that that is what we are doing. So I think it's important to note that, no, we may not necessarily teach new content each day, but there is an assignment, or there should be, that is attached to the content that was taught the previous day, but the teachers should have that Zoom open for the students that seek clarification on that day's assignment.
Thank you. I think also an important, not only, I do want to give kudos to our teachers, but I think also it's important to note that we should recognize that our student population has been very good and working very well in trying to deal with the circumstances that have been presented to them. And I do think there are many parents that are also supportive of what is going on. Some might be silent, but there is a great, and I do want to compliment our community and our parental base. I think they're striving to the greatest extent possible to make things work for their children and their families, and I give kudos to them for that. Are there any other statements before we move on from the administrative team? Mr. Pushkar, can you, and we wanted to look at, I know that there was a question earlier, a comparison of failure rates from the 1920 school year versus the 2021 school year. It's important to note that this data is reflective of the first semester. Obviously, the first semester of last year was performed under pre-COVID conditions, whereas the first semester of this year is obviously under COVID conditions. It is believed that live everyday instruction will not lower potential failure rates. A number of students failing indicates the student is failing at least one course in the school year. So whenever we're looking at failure percentages, a number of students, that does not mean that that is the gross number of students that are failing. That is just simply the number of students that could be failing one particular course in that time designated time frame.
Mr. Masha, can I stop you before you move forward?
Sure.
Just to clarify, we don't mean live everyday instruction like March 12th, 2020. We mean that perhaps a 2-1-2 model or a live 5-day hybrid model. We obviously know that 5-day-a-week students with us is always going to be the most successful model. So when we say live everyday instruction, we're talking about live everyday instruction within a hybrid type system.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Krofcheck, for adding clarity to that.
Mr. Kropchak, can you speak on to why there's 1,500 less courses taken this year? Is it just the kids that went to SOLA?
Yeah, there are a number kids in other LEAs, and we say LEA, that's some other educational environment, whether it be private school or cyber school or SOLA or something of that nature. In addition to a slight decrease, not a huge decrease, we've had a slight decrease in overall enrollment at the high school. That bubble picks up with the middle school, but those would be some of the reasons, Mrs. Smith.
Thank you.
Okay, and looking at the comparison, obviously the greater number of courses, 5,008 in 1920, the failure rate's 340. That does indicate a lower percentage. But whenever you're looking at the lessening of the amount of courses, obviously you can see that there are higher number of students that are failing. That also then directly impacts the percentage of students that are failing. But if you look in comparison, there were in the 1920 at the high school level 113 students that received some failing grades in some classes, versus this year there are 147 students that are receiving a failing grade. At the middle school, we're looking at basically a similarity. There is 300 or so difference in the number of courses that we're taking. There are in 1920, there were 64 failures. In the 2021, there are 494. But once again, I would like to stress that that could be one student failing multiple classes, even up to 8 classes, whereas there could just be one student that might be not achieving well in one class. I don't know, Mrs. Kuhar, if you would like to embellish upon that.
That is correct, Mr. Masha. We also had our enrollment this year increased by about 25 students. And just to kind of put this into perspective, of those courses that were failed, we had 60 of those courses received a 0%, which indicates that students did absolutely nothing. I actually broke it down. I disaggregated the data to look at the percentages that students received in those courses. We had 57 of them receive a 1 to a 10%, 66 students, 11 to a 20%, 39 students, a 21 to a 30%, 53 students received a 31 to a 40%, 73 students received a 41 to a 50%, and 63 students received a 51 to a 59%. And obviously, comparing this year to last year, it is a totally different instructional model. So I knew that we would have an increase in failures. We are attempting to work with students, but they have to work with us as well. They need to get on. And the other thing is we had students that of the courses failed, the majority of those, over half, were students that failed itinerant courses. They just didn't do anything in the itinerant courses. So while the data looks disparaging, for the most part, it has to do with the students that truly are not making a concerted effort to work with the teachers as well to help them be successful.
Thank you. When you look at the data, it is not a reflection of the inability of the teachers or the school. It is, we believe, a large portion of what is taking place is a lack of engagement of our students in their classes, in their courses. If you were listening to what Mrs. Kuhar had indicated, there are students that are failing every one of their courses. Okay. There are certain extreme circumstances where on a yearly basis, there are students that are not achieving to the highest levels and are struggling, but there has to be the engagement piece also, and that is an important piece of when you're looking and reflecting upon failures. There does seem to be a lessening of the engagement simply because of the circumstances presented. Ms. Pushkar, can you? Okay, at the elementary level, last year there was 587 students in the building. 27 of those students had at least failed one course for a 7.2%. This year there are 521 students in those buildings. There are 73 students that are at least failing one course for 14%. And I don't know, Mr. Clara, if you would like to add any other statements before I move to the primary.
I think it is an important point that often the failure is not related necessarily to anything other than attendance and the engagement part of it. If we're not able to reach you, if you're not coming to class, and we're going to talk about some of the things we've done to try to get kids to come back, but when they're not in front of you, it's pretty tough, to get somebody to turn something in. And so we make a lot of phone calls and we send a lot of letters, and we even have engagement officers visiting people. But again, unfortunately, I think that that's a reflection not necessarily of instruction or the quality of the kind of the teaching that we're doing, but sometimes if we don't have you in front of us, there's not a lot we can do. So that's been a real challenge.
Okay, and the data presented for the primary center last year at 278 students in the primary center. 27 of those students achieved at least one failing grade in a class for a 10% failure rate. And this year there are 268 students, of which 37 have at least achieved or responsible for getting a failure grade for 15%. And Mr. Novikov, would you like to weigh in on any statement to that?
No, I mean, I think that it's obviously a kindergarten, first grade building, and it's not typical. It's very different in the grading, and usually that, just like what everyone else said, usually failures at that level are more indicative of our teachers didn't have anything to really grade. But still, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Pushkar, can you please move down? Okay, we would like to identify some of the measures that we have taken to prevent student failures. We believe failures are directly correlated to lack of student engagement. There are daily check-ins by teachers, counselors, and administrators. I know for a fact that many of the teachers, if not all of the teachers, make very concerted efforts to ensure that the students that they are teaching are there on as frequent a basis as possible. I know that the counselors have made multiple efforts in reaching out to our students to determine what the factors are that are limiting their ability to be able to attend, participate in courses. And I know that the administration has made multiple efforts to reach those students and those families. There's a parent portal that parents can go in and view what their child is doing on a daily basis. There are robocalls that are sent out to parents as reminders, and there are directions posted on various websites and places for parents. I think that's important to note that parents do have the ability to go in and observe what is taking place within their child's educational process. We have had engagement officers actually make home visits to those students that we've identified as experiencing the most problems, trying to identify what problems might be limiting their ability, whether or not it was technology or just other circumstances that were involved. So we've actually physically reached out to those individuals. There are daily attendance phone calls that are made to parents. There is a website. There's a number of resources out on our website that support our students and our parents. And in some cases, to the most extreme, we have had to resort to referrals to outside agencies to assist us in getting our students to participate in the school process. Once again, I welcome any administrators if they'd like to add any comments to that.
As far as the attendance piece and engagement, just again, to kind of put it into perspective, we have 63 students at the middle school that are truancy concerns for us. And we have developed truancy elimination plans for 40 of those students. So again, it's critical for students to be successful that they get on with the teachers they're on, asking questions, reaching out via email. We don't want any student to fail, but we need them to engage with us in order to ensure that that doesn't happen. As far as attendance at the middle school, I can't speak for the other buildings. There is a daily attendance form. If that is simply marked present, your child is considered present for the day. If you fail to complete the form, then we check with the teachers. If your child was on with the teachers throughout the day, then that is considered present. If neither of those things happen, then unfortunately your child is marked absent for the day. So I just want to clarify that so that everyone can hear how, especially to make sure your child doesn't become one of those truancy concerns that we have.
Mrs. Kuhar, I hate to put you on a spot. Could you please reflect a little bit in greater detail what a truancy elimination plan might be?
So for students who have an excessive number of absences, and quite honestly, we have been very flexible this year. Typically, you should write a truancy elimination plan at 15 days of absences, but due to this being a hybrid model, we have been very lenient. Honestly, some students have 20, 30 days, even more days of absences. So when they get to a specific number where they're not engaging with us, families are not engaging with us via phone calls, emails, etc. Mrs. Meyer and I will give her the credit for the truancy elimination plans. But what we do is we draft this plan to eliminate the truancy problem. Why isn't the student attending? So obviously, under the hybrid model, one of the easiest things is for the parent to complete the attendance form as present, or to have your child engage with the teachers throughout the school day. They would be considered present. We want the parent's input, but when we are not able to get a hold of the parent to engage them, then we have to draft the plan ourselves, which doesn't take into consideration all of the issues or concerns that might be happening within the family. So again, it's critical for that engagement piece to write truancy elimination plans so they are individualized for families. So engagement is critical in every aspect of this. That is why we reach out so often.
Yeah, and just anecdotally, I can tell you that, we are pretty good watchdogs on attendance in the sense that even if we're in our, let's say, third day where a student has not reported attendance appropriately, we're sending out robocalls and parents are calling in and saying, well, what's happening? So, even in some of the kind of natural things that happen, even in the course of a normal year, with attendance calls and robocalls and whatnot, we're getting a lot of feedback from, hey, look, they just logged on late. Hey, they logged on late. Please disregard that. So that's pretty consistent. At the high school, we actually have seen an increase in engagement in the last several weeks overall. But we have been targeting through all these measures, and I can't give enough credit to those that work with attendance in our district, Mrs. Sutton, Mrs. Tarr, as well as our counselors, Mrs. Hanford, Mrs. Salembo, that are constantly trying to engage those that are disengaged, because we do feel that engagement, I've been saying this since the first day of school, engagement is key here, everybody. In the hybrid model, I can't tell you how many stories that we have heard. Well, I let my kid work extra hours at McDonald's, or I did, this, and I said this maybe even under some scrutiny several board meetings ago. My main job as the principal is to assure that we're educating from 7:35 to 2:24 every single day. So in that off day, when you have an assignment, when you have a video to watch, when you have those things that are happening that are asked of you, we need full and complete support of all stakeholders to make sure those things do happen. Not the stories and not the calls that I'm getting. Well, I let my son get extra hours, or, and again, we always cater to those that have necessities and things that need to be done. We are very flexible. We have always been a flexible district, to where we will always work with kids first, kids and families first. But when we're asking those tasks to be done, when we're asking for those processes to take place, it is pertinent that we are doing it so that it molds into the model itself. Not, well, I'm going to take these extra hours, or I'm going to take this day off, I'm going to sleep until 10. You know, that's not how the model works, and we consistently been saying that. You can't allow those things to take place for those things to happen. So engagement has improved overall, and hopefully that we can continue with these measures to make sure that we are getting kids fully engaged.
Good points, Mr. Croft. I also do believe that there are a lot of extenuating circumstances that do occur, unpredictable situations that happen within the family unit. I would like to be a proponent that if there are situations that are occurring, to please reach out to our building level principals. I think Mr. Krofcheck made a very valuable point. The school and the principals are very willing to listen and be receptive to measures that we could help that student and those families overcome the obstacles that they are facing.
And again, I want to reiterate that, Mr. Masher, this isn't about those extenuating circumstances. I'm not trying to paint everything into with a broad brush, because we always work with students when they're in need. It's about the overall, the encompassing program of engagement. That is of utmost importance. In any extenuating circumstance, we will go to the nth degree, as we have done at least in my 11 years as the principal, to help people that have those circumstances.
I think you could probably tell from what is being said that student engagement is a very important component to the success. Potential reasons for failures, there is that lack of student engagement. I think we don't want to belabor that issue, but I think we've indicated our stance on that. Failure of students to attend classes. I think we have also touched upon the fact that there are a number of students that are not logging in or not attending classes, and the truancy that is occurring because of that. There are incidents where technology is available. We do have the one-to-one technology capable. We actually got that. We are very, very fortunate. We were not slated to get that until either the end of December or the beginning part of January. We were able to get that at an earlier date, and I think that really has impacted our ability to be able to provide better instruction to our students and opportunities. But there are families that have not picked up that technology. We've often, those families that are in need, they've reached out to us, and we've even provided a MiFi connection to assist those individuals. We obviously understand that COVID has played an important part in what is taking place in the world today. There are families that have been negatively impacted due to illnesses or even quarantines, and we do recognize that. There are financial hardships that are being incurred because of the circumstances that are being presented. And then there are also just the normal distractions that take place within the confines of the households or with students. Ms. Krofcheck, I know you're getting on there. I don't know if you had something that you wanted to add. I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, I was just going to add, in reach out to us, reach out to me, Mrs. Sutton, reach out to our counselors, reach out to us, and we will work with you. And I literally have a dozen stories, but I have, I literally have members of my staff that are making wake up calls for certain individuals within the district. That is the kind of staff we've had. And honestly, that is why we have become the district that we've become over the years, because it's small stories like that continue to, I think, define Southmoreland as really being different in so many ways than a lot of other districts.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm done. I'm just.
And I don't want to be remiss in recognizing the fact that this is the work that is being done is not only taking place at the high school level, but I have an office next to Mrs. Meyer at the middle school, and I know all the efforts that she is doing to reach out to students. And I walk past Miss Fratto's room quite frequently, and I see her interacting in one measure or another with students. And I know that Sarah at the primary center is doing the same. So I know that there is great effort being put forth, not only through our counselors, but our secretaries, our attendance officers, secretaries. They're doing everything they can. Mr. Pushkar, can you, we have developed failure recovery plans at all levels. Those plans are in place right now. Actually, I do believe that at the bottom of your report card, you should have seen a statement that there is an opportunity for any students that's experiencing 59% or lower, that our schools would work with you to provide you the opportunity to be successful. Once again, I think it's important to note that it is the obligation of those students and those parents to make the effort to reach out to the schools to seek that assistance. I know that our schools are very willing to work with those individuals, but in order to be successful, you have to work at being successful. And we have put plans out to the schools. I will have those posted on our website if they are not already posted. I don't believe that that all of them are, but I will make sure that they're all posted under a specific tab on our website tomorrow. I think we have the ability to go in on this document and show, but I don't want to belabor. So Ms. Pushkar, can you please move down? Long range, I know that there are questions about what we're going to do moving forward. Long range remediation efforts. We're looking at a third quarter credit recovery where students might be provided or can be provided the opportunity to work. They are currently being provided that opportunity, but we're going to go to greater extents to provide students the opportunity to make up some of the credit or courses that they're failing. We're looking at after-school tutoring programs to be implemented. And we're also, and I know that it was mentioned earlier by citizens' comments, we're also looking at summer school options. Community, I'm sorry, does any of the administrative team want to expound on any of that? Community.
I would like to add, Mr. Masha, is during the off days, or I guess if we're going to hybrid, it doesn't pertain to this, but when students have Zoom meetings, those are not the time for parents to have questions for teachers, etc. Those times should be emailed and set aside when the teacher is not instructing the other students. That is for instruction only. So we appreciate that when parents reach out and schedule a different time instead of during the Zoom when the teacher is trying to instruct.
Community expectations, students must participate and be actively engaged in instruction daily. That is key. I would like to make a suggestion as an administrative team, tentative time frame. One of the agenda items, we would like to return to the AB hybrid instructional model for 6 through 12 on Monday, February 8th. And next week, at next week's board meeting, we would also like to do a presentation for the AB hybrid daily instruction plan with the tentative rollout of that plan on Monday, February 15th. So, Mrs. Williams, that is the extent of our presentation.
Thank you. Is it possible for somebody from the admin team to explain what that daily instruction, AB hybrid daily instruction plan would entail? I know that there's not we're not ready for a presentation yet, but I just want the public to know what we are talking about and what grades that would affect.
Okay. The daily instructional plan would be that there would be, we would continue providing students that make the choice to remain in the virtual setting, but those individuals that decide to go with the AB model, there would be instruction provided on a daily basis, keeping in mind that in that instructional plan, there will be day where that instruction will be in person. The offsetting day, there would be information presented to that student either synchronously or asynchronously. And I don't know if there's anyone else that could better explain that, but there would be the opportunity for students to join in with classes, keeping in mind that those classes are scheduled at particular times, so that could necessitate those students having to participate in the regularly scheduled classes. There's also an asynchronous option where students would be able to, that class would be recorded, and then that recording would be available to students at an off time.
I have a question. You have on our agenda here this information. It says the term AB plan or model shall mean a quote blended plan in which a grade or school splits the students into two groups, with one group attending class in physical presence in a school building and the other group attending by virtual means, and alternating every school day in succession, continuing the alternating into the succeeding weeks. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, Dr. Fike.
Okay, so it's going to continue. In other words, it doesn't matter if you go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you don't have to take, you're going to keep on going into, you might be Tuesday, Thursday, it'll keep going and going and going every day, right?
Yes.
Every day.
Yes.
And that's called the blended plan.
Yes.
That's what we were on prior to going out when we went out in substantial. We were on the AB hybrid plan or blended per se, where you're getting some days of in-person and some days of remote.
Okay, we weren't doing the 2-1-2 plan back then, Michelle, right?
No, we weren't. We won't be now either.
We won't be.
No, we were never doing 2-1-2. We were always doing every other day.
We were always doing alternate days, Dr. Fike.
And it continued in succession into the next week.
Yes. So if Monday was an A day, Tuesday would be a B day, Wednesday would be an A day, Thursday would be a B day, Friday would be an A day, Monday would be a B day.
Okay.
It would just keep on rolling.
There are no days off.
No.
So it's uninterrupted, even if there's like a holiday or something like that, the cycle continues.
Yes.
Yes.
If there was a holiday on a Monday, if that was an A day, then Tuesday would be an A day, and it would just continue. We have a calendar also posted on the website for parents that they can view that.
Okay, and you're doing that now K-5, right?
We are currently doing that K-5 right now, but we'd also like to recommend that the board consider doing that 6-12 moving forward.
So there would be some days when the kids are getting 3 virtual days, right?
Some weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Some weeks. Mm-hmm.
But there would be, conversely, there would be some weeks that students would be receiving 3 in-person days.
In-person days. You know, I looked at this, I'm almost afraid to say this, but as I was looking at your presentation, you had 3 headings there. One about failure is directly related to potential reasons for failure in the recovery plan. And under each of them, you had at least 6 bullet points. And I'm sitting here saying the failure is directly related to the kids aren't in school. The potential reasons for failure, the kids aren't in school. the recovery plan, get them in school. I guess I see this so differently as why our children are experiencing this. When you look at the, I think the middle school, that's an 8 times failure rate. The high school's a 3 times failure rate. Elementary's 1 and 2 times the failure rate. Those are serious concerns. And it seems like so much of this, and please forgive me, I'm not being critical, it all seems to fall on the backs of the students. All I heard was it's the students who aren't doing what has to be done. And the only way you can handle that is if you have access to those students in person. I can't get past that. It's an Occam's razor thing with me.
Mr. Masha, did you want to read your recommendation?
Yes. It is, I'm sorry, I gotta move it closer. It is recommended the board consider the return of secondary students grades 6 through 12 to the AB model, hybrid model, instructional model. It is understood the state attestation form must be followed in regards to social distancing, the wearing of face covering, and adhering to the current recommendations for pre-K to 12 schools following identification of COVID cases or cases.
For how long?
For how long what, Dr. Pike?
Is this plan going to stay in effect forever, for the rest of the year? For how long is this going to go on?
Well, as I had outlined, I would like to, we would like to administratively present an AB model with 5-day instruction next week.
I mean, how long is this plan in effect? How long is this thing you're proposing? How long is this plan in effect?
We would like to see it continue in effect for
the rest of the school year.
As long as possible, yes. And I do understand that there are a lot of efforts being made to mitigate COVID, and hopefully, I would love, I'm going to be totally candid, I would love nothing more than to see our students return to the greatest extent possible. But until we can get COVID completely mitigated and under control, we are still handed with circumstances.
CDC recommends that all children go back to school now. You know that.
While mitigating.
That's not what I'm hearing, Michelle. That's not what I'm hearing.
Every report that I've heard is that it's safe for kids to be in school as long as they follow the guidelines, such as wearing masks and maintaining social distancing. And we're not in a position to maintain social distancing in our buildings right now. And that's just the reality of the situation, unfortunately.
None of the other schools can do it either.
I'm not hearing this.
And
so Mrs. Smith, some of the other schools, what they're doing is 50% of some district students remain virtual. Therefore, when you have a class size of 4 or you have a class size of 13 versus 27 or 23, you're able to social distance, and they were able to bring their students back. I know that administration is working on a live component for 6 through 12 so that people would be engaging with their students every single day. It would also give a virtual option for people who didn't want to return to the building because they wanted consistency. We still have to follow the social distancing guidelines. And here's something else to think about within the guidelines. So somebody had asked what is considered a case. A case is when we receive a phone call from a family saying that they have had a positive molecular test or a positive antigen test, not when somebody calls and says they have the sniffles. So a case is also when the Department of Health calls the school district and says, you now have a case within your school district. And what you have to do is close your building for 3 to 5 days. The more children we have within a building, the greater the chance is of one person having spread to somebody else or having cases or then shutting down sports programs. Because when we have a case in the high school will close, the sports programs will close, nobody will come in, our students won't travel. So that is the other portion of this. When you're helping to mitigate the spread, you are also lessening the risk of spread within the school district. Unfortunately, we don't have the staff. Some school districts teach in the round because that's how their school was, built. So they are able to take down partitions. They're able to co-teach because they have enough teaching staff to do that. Where one teacher's teaching in the morning and the other teacher's teaching virtually, and then they swap. So there are things that other districts are doing. I'm not going to deny that, but we don't have the capability to do that because we lack staff. We have cut staff in previous years through early retirements and not replaced people. And now we are in the position where we have enough staff to staff these classes, but we don't have extra staff to say, okay, let me, instead of teaching one kindergarten class here, let's split them into two, and we have enough teachers to do that. We just don't. So I get what the CDC is saying, but they're also still saying that you need to follow social distancing guidelines.
Are you aware of the fact that if a person in a family of 6, say you have a mother, father, and 4 kids, and 5 of them are negative and 1 of them is positive, they are counted as 6 positive cases. That is an absolute fact. And that's what's pumping up these numbers. Heather Smith spoke about it. She said, these kids all live together. Some of them go to school and some of them don't. And when they come home, it's crazy to believe this. To destroy our children for these outright lies is just not acceptable.
I'm certainly not sitting here lying to you, Dr. Fike.
No, they are.
So,
and I'm not
unfortunately for me, I feel that I still need to follow some resemblance of guidelines to keep the community safe. So as our numbers creep back up, as buildings, last week our numbers were 125 per 100,000. We have gone from, as far as our community spread goes, in the last several days, our community spread is higher than it had been. We're back up to like 99 point something, which is still below 100, but that's just our demographic of zip codes. So yes, I believe that we could go back on the hybrid model and we could see how it goes. It has gone well for K through 5. We've had 2 snow days, of course, thrown in there too, but I think that with it coming down, it's safe to return these kids to the building, but I don't think it's safe to return all kids to the building right now. So I think that's something you work towards. I mean, at least let's discuss that when we've been in moderate for a while, not going back in substantial to everyone back. We weren't everyone back when we were in low moderate. We shouldn't be taking everybody back in substantial. Mr. Krofcheck, did you have something?
Yeah, going to some of the other models in the district in which my teenage daughter attends, with 2 snow days in a row, there's a group of kids that are out for 5 days. Monday, Tuesday, kids are completely out of in-person instruction, even though they went back and they could say, hey, look, we've come back to the 2-1-2 model. There are 50% of students in her district, and I won't mention it by name, that are now 0 time in the classroom with the teachers. And that's just kind of a point. We're in winter, and I want to bring that up too, that through this model and kind of touting the AB model provides us the opportunity to provide the every other day, provides the opportunity to make that happen. And just the kind of latch onto a point that Mrs. Williams said, how many percent What is the percentage of students from Connellsville that are back? Is it 90? Is it 50? Can anybody say Connellsville, of its 1,400 students in its high school, how many are back in person every day? Because I know it's not 100%, it's not 80%, it's probably closer to 50%. So when you have half your kids, and if we had half our kids return every day, that's possible. But we've never had that number of students to be able to make that model happen. So when 80% of our kids come back in person, we can't facilitate it. I don't have the cafeteria space to do it. We'd be looking at from 15 to 30 kids on a bus. Those are all the not talked about factors when we're all talking about, well, so-and-so is doing this and so-and-so, but are you talking about how many percentage of their actual kids are back in in-person instruction? If we have 50% that want to come back, yeah, absolutely we can do it. When you have 80%, I don't know with full conscience that I can say I can have classes, because I do have classes that have, if we were to bring them back, we'll have 30 kids in them. And 30 kids are not going to be 6 feet apart. Just to be clear on that. 30 kids in some of my classrooms will not be 6 feet.
At the middle school, we are already at capacity for following the 6 feet of social distancing within the classrooms. And that is only with basically 1/3 of our students, because 1/3 opted for the fully virtual model, which leaves us with the 2/3, 1/3 of that attending on one day, followed by the alternate day. So if we bring everyone back, we are definitely not following social distancing guidelines.
I have done my best to look for the research that says social distancing has done anything to mitigate this thing. Show me the evidence that social distancing mitigates this transmission. I understand, Vince, you're in a box, you're getting your orders from Wolf. I just never thought I would live to see the wholesale destruction of the educational system based on false data.
I mean, per the study that you're talking about from the CDC for the kids to go back to school, I mean, I have it on my computer right here, and it specifically states that the distancing, that all precautions still need to be followed. All mitigation measures in schools must continue. Prevention protocols must remain in place.
Right.
So, I mean, the CDC is who you were just talking about, is saying we should send our kids back to school, but they're saying that with these caveats.
Well, somebody's is lying to us then, because it's across the television screen. CDC recommends all children return to school. If you look at Lori Lightfoot in Chicago, she's at an all-time war with the teachers who are refusing to go back. She said the kids have got to go back to school. They're not talking ABs. They're not talking this stuff.
And we have to look beyond the one little headline of CDC says kids can go back to school. They do say that. And then if you read farther, they say, if you follow the mitigation guidelines, it's more than a 5-sentence headline. There's more to it than that.
And you buy those mitigation headlines. You buy that information, Candace, and I don't. Okay.
We just have to agree to disagree on that matter.
Let's destroy the kids.
I think what's frustrating is that we've had almost a year to figure out a way to get all these kids back and social distance. Maybe not have every class, maybe have lunch in your classroom, something, but we haven't done anything, and it's ridiculous.
I disagree that we haven't. I'm sorry, Mr. Kravchuk.
Could you elaborate on what that means?
What means? Maybe figure out another way to get them back to school, at least 4 days. And maybe not have every class. They say we're short on staff. Maybe only teach the basic classes that we need just to get them in there. Do something. We haven't even looked at any other possibilities. other than we just can't do it?
You know, when I was in high school, they ran out of space and they rented trailers and they put up tents and we had outdoor classes and none of this has been tried. None of this.
All of that stuff costs money, Dr. Fike, that
You're
this
darn right it
district
does.
doesn't have.
And nothing costs more than what's happening to our children.
Use the third floor in the high school.
We still need teachers. That's the part that I don't, you know, I proposed this back at the beginning, that we bring K through 5 back and we utilize all of the building space that we have. We don't have enough teachers certified K through 5 to spread our teachers out. We probably don't have enough staff certified to do that. Like that's, I mean, so what classes do we cut? I mean, what classes do we cut?
But not all the kids are going to come back. So maybe the number isn't as high as everyone thinks.
This community wants everybody back full time. I tend to agree that that number will be somewhere around 80%. And we can't social distance with 80%. One of the most important things that Mr. Krofcheck said today was how full the cafeteria space is, where you are sitting without a mask. So it's the most vulnerable time of these kids' day, and they're not going to have a mask on. And in the high school, that is more concerning. But because there's a high school student, why they weren't back, why they recommended K through 5 is because the high school student is spreading this easier than the elementary student. So to now put them in a cafeteria and expect that we're not going to have spread when we're eating without a mask, that's your most vulnerable location. I don't know. So now we want to cut classes for students for the sake of everybody being back 4 days. Everybody back 4 days is the same. It's the same amount of people in the building. It doesn't matter if you're taking a day off in the middle or not. It's the same, unable to social distance.
These neighboring districts they're not cutting classes. Yawk has 25 more teachers than Southmoreland. So they're able to make those things happen as a result of appropriate staffing. I had 46 teachers 10 years ago. I have 38. So if I have 46 teachers, I can use the third floor, which we used to use when we had 46 teachers, and I can provide social distancing options or larger groups. I mean, I literally can have 40 kids in a Spanish class because I went from 1.5 Spanish teachers to 1. And we've literally had to tell students in this district, because we've cut Spanish position at the high school, you can't take Spanish because we don't have enough positions to do it. I think that's the elephant in the room, is that there are others that are doing this that are appropriately staffed to do it. I don't have enough teachers to do lunch duty. I have a security guard that's, you know, very effectively, I'm not knocking the security guard, that's holding the overflow of lunch with half the kids during the hybrid model. And again, I welcome everybody to come in and offer a solution to me that doesn't violate the health and safety protocols that the Commonwealth asks us to do. And I'm not in a position, Dan Krofcheck, Perryopolis, Pennsylvania, you know, degree in history and public administration, to say, yeah, that's all bunk. That doesn't make sense. Those rules don't apply. I'm not in a position to say that. And secondly, to, you know, go through and working with the different various groups that need to make all these things happen. We're not saying this because we don't want kids. You know, we took all the criticism in the world last year about graduation. You know, I've done 10 commencement ceremonies. You don't think I want to do another commencement ceremony, the commencement ceremony the way I've done it 10 times? But we have to follow the guidelines, and those are the rules that we're forced to follow.
I have a question. You said about you have less teachers now, But how many students do we have less now than we had 10 years ago?
2010, I believe we had around 667 kids, and now we have 534.
Oh, there you go.
But this isn't an elementary school. It's not like first grade is 30 kids and second grade is 40. I still have 534 kids that need to have PE based on chapter 4. So having 2 PE teachers means you take 532 divided by 2. I have 2 PE teachers that have 230 kids apiece. You know, it's not as simple as saying it's the number of teachers divided by the number of kids, because there's requirements that only this certification is able to teach physics, for example. This certification is only able to teach biology. And
okay.
I wish I could say it was that simple, because it would make complete sense.
Vince, I have a question. In these school districts where they're giving in-person instruction, have they arrested everybody? Have they arrested the superintendent, the board, everybody? Have they, what has happened to those people who are violating these fabulous rules? Are they
Dr. Fike, did you listen to anything that was said? Because we're not saying these school districts are violating rules. We're saying that their circumstances are different. If you have a school district that has 40 to 50% of their students out on virtual, they can fully return, because that means they have 50% of their students in the building. I'm not worried about what's going on in all of these other districts, because we have to live within the means of what is left here at this district to live within. And I'm sorry, over the course of several years, this board previously did nothing but cut to this district. Now we have nothing left. We don't have an extra Spanish teacher floating around that can now teach English, because we cut them. We cut everything from here. I'm not going to sit here and listen to let's cut more. Let's cut more so we can provide less, so that everybody can go back inside a building. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I mean, everything's about cut. Everything's about how many this and how many that. And I'm sorry, everybody here is working hard to do the best that they can possibly do. I mean, we are working to try to get back to some sense of normalcy, some sense of some kids in the building on every day, possibly being able to afford to kids 6 through 12 a virtual component every other day, live with their teachers, so that we don't have to send kids to SOLA, so that there's options for kids to stay home. We're working towards that. We're trying. We're not every other district. We don't have the room. Dr. Fike, if you want to know if people are being arrested, call out to the school districts and see what they're doing and how they're doing it, so that you can report back to us and tell us why we're failing and they're not.
Michelle, I have friends in others who teach in other schools, and they're telling me their kids are back in school. I'm saying if they can do it and not be arrested or fined or whatever it is, what is this thing about us not being able to make any decisions other than what Wolf is telling us, or that, those people are telling us? I don't know. Michelle, why aren't we all dead? Why aren't we all dead by now from this disease? Why isn't everybody dead by now?
Dr. Fike, I would like to point out one thing, and in all due respect, my sister passed away from COVID.
But she had other things wrong with her, Vince.
But she passed away from COVID, Dr. Fike.
But we don't have other things wrong with us. Our kids don't have those same disorders.
Yeah, first of all, you don't know that, Catherine.
Oh,
you
yeah, right.
You don't have any idea about. I've had people close to me that have passed with COVID, so it is very real. It's something that's very real, and it's out there, and I think we have to respect it, and I think that's what we're doing in this school district.
We should all be dead, Gail. We should all be dead.
Mrs. Williams, can we put a motion on the floor and actually get to something?
Yes, please.
Do we still need to read stuff? I'm not sure where we're even at the moment.
Mr. Masha made a recommendation to return to the AB model. Mr. Patonic, I would hope that we're not going to read this entire resolution. Is there,
Go to the
Okay.
second page and start filling in E1.
are you able to see that, Mrs. Raymond?
Yeah, I'm looking. Just give me a second. Okay, I guess for E1, we just need to fill in a date. Is that?
I don't know if there are any differences with special education. This, you know,
Oh, I see. I
you
understand.
have A, B, C, D. So maybe Mr. Masha could tell us what he wants filled in there.
Well, currently, right now, special education students have the option to come 5 days. So they're still going to all follow the AB.
Other than special education, which has the opportunity to remain 5 days.
Yes.
So in item number A, your recommendation is middle school regular education model AB. The middle school special education model is AB or 5 days.
Yes.
High school would be the same thing, AB, and special education AB or 5 days.
Yes.
Then please go to the next page and, well, it's actually the bottom of the page. No, it is the next page, the effective change date. You need to state a date.
Okay, and I think the recommendation was for Monday, February 8th, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Okay.
And Mrs. Raymond, I'd also like to point out under E1, there is in fine print there that students may, with parental approval, attend only remotely. And they would, if they wanted to do that, they would need to reach out to their building principals.
Fair enough. Okay, so I guess that is the motion. I'll put forth that motion.
I need a second.
I'll second that. I do have a question though. Those on the thing that Mr. Masha showed us earlier, the February 8th, that's the start of the AB, the hybrid, the old model that we used previously. And your February 15th, you're rolling out something different, a different hybrid. That's for sure.
No, it's not a different hybrid, Mr. Polakowski. It's just, we'll still follow the AB hybrid model, but we're going to offer opportunities for daily live instruction.
Okay.
In between, so.
Is that in this motion that we're doing
No,
now,
sir.
that February 15th
sir.
is going to happen?
That'll be, what will happen is on February 11th, there will be a discussion and presentation about how that will look. And then we will be voting to move that forward on the 15th.
So on the 15th, the hybrid is going to be a little bit different, significantly different.
So
go ahead, Ms.
I can explain my understanding of it, Mr. Polakowski, and maybe somebody could correct me if I'm interpreting that incorrectly. This would be for 6 through 12. This would allow for, if your student is an A student, on B days, they would be able to receive live instruction with their teacher following their same schedule. So what this will also allow for is students that want to remain in the district without going to an outside cyber school, they could remain remote and be following every day as a remote student versus only having recorded or assignments posted up where you're learning completely asynchronously. Does that make sense to you? And did I explain that correctly?
You did.
Yeah, I did hear it before from Mr. Masha when he was trying to tell you about it. I just wanted to hear it again and make sure everybody else heard it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
I would like to say that my heart goes out to the people in this community who so desperately want their children in school.
And I'd like to say that the rest of the board's heart goes out to that as well. We are not sitting here not caring about students.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear that from another board member as to how much the rest of the board cares. I'm sorry, but it had to be said. Is there any other discussion? Can I have a roll call?
Mr. Carson,
Oh, sorry, no.
Dr. Fike,
No.
Mr. Polakowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Raymond,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes,
Yes.
Mrs. Heather Smith.
I'm gonna vote yes, just because I want them to get something, but I think it's ridiculous that we can't get 4 days at least, like everybody else, and same size district, and we still can't figure it out.
Mrs. Kristen Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries 6 yes, 1 absent, 2 no.
Sorry, I'm trying to get back to my agenda. Personnel, resignation of Sean Cartwright as head middle school boys soccer coach.
Board is asked to accept the resignation of Sean Cartwright as head middle school boys soccer coach and authorize administration to post the position.
You ready?
I need a motion.
So moved.
I need a second.
You ready for comment?
I'll second.
Any discussion? I need a roll call vote.
Mrs. Rhodes,
Yes.
Mrs. Heather Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Kristen Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Carson,
Yes.
Dr. Fike,
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Raymond,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries 8 yes, 1 absent.
Resignation of Daniel Boring as assistant middle school boys soccer coach.
Board is asked to accept the resignation of Dan Boring as assistant middle school boys soccer coach and authorize administration to post the position.
I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Polakowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Raymond,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes,
Yes.
Mrs. Heather Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Kristen Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Carson,
Yes.
Dr. Fike,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries 8 yes, 1 absent.
Mrs. Tarson, do we have any citizens' comments?
I believe Mr. Kiefer wanted to speak again. Jan Kiefer.
Thank you. I could have written a script for tonight's meeting. But so how about this for an idea then? Why don't the kids skip lunch and you don't have all that nasty food that you're serving them that has Roundup in? That Roundup's shown up in second generations of mice. We've been on Roundup before. And if they would bring in a healthy smoothie and drink, that would be great. But if they start hydrating like they should, then your restroom volume would be too small. So these kids are constipated and restricted in your indoor artificial restrictive constrictive setting. On the CDC, I'm glad that you look to them as the ultimate authority because, gee, I think they're probably one of the most corrupt organizations in 3 letters in the world. But you know, just in the last week, I watched them pretty close. They took a statement down from their website that said there is no connection between vaccinations and autism. They just took it down. I thought that was nice. And WHO, Mr. Masher, you look to them as your shrine. So look at the WHO. just in the last week, I watched them pretty close. What does the WHO do? They say, we have trouble with this PCR testing. And Carrie Mullis has some rare, or a friend of mine has some rare footage of Carrie Mullis talking about the PCR testing. So that if that doesn't get you off of your little one world Scottsdale versus Connellsville schooling level, then let me see. Oh yeah, there's a landmark case on the FCC. And I followed them very closely. And I watched this case live and I watched the review and then I watched it all disappear. Of course, you can't record the actual case hearing, but I watched it live. And it amounts to, it's a 20-year legal battle and we're at about year 16 of it. But when you go in there and ask them about radiation now, they'll say, well, we're telling you what happened with a cell phone study in 2009. Before children had any of this stuff, before there was Wi-Fi. Now we have the biggest market in the world for that stuff was young children. And what you're putting your children into is that world 24 or, throughout their whole schooling. This is only going to go away when we walk away from the screens and go back to an organic, natural lifestyle like you would see in other places of the world right now. Or to just close and picture it this way, it would be like a really healthy hippie farm with a lot of children. And that would be the ideal world for children. And we could do that here tomorrow and give back half the money that we're putting into education today. Good night.
Do we have any other comments?
I have a question.
Wait, the agenda's over.
I have a
There's no
question.
there's public comment, but there's not comment from the school board. Mr. Patani, practice parliamentary procedure at this point.
If you take additional matters to vote on, you would have to have additional public comment. If there's just a question, that's not exactly the same thing because you're not voting.
Well, what does it amount to then?
I don't know. I don't know what the question is.
Well, we just finished public comment. Does the agenda say adjournment?
Usually does.
Where are we in the agenda then? Are we in adjournment or are we
Someone has to make a motion.
I have a question. I have a question.
Amend the rules to change the
The
agenda.
president has to decide whether to recognize the question or call for a
Dr.
motion.
Fike, do you want to ask Mr. Kiefer if you're allowed to make a comment? We'll let him decide tonight since he's jumping ugly in the background.
I understand that
Well,
there.
I never relinquished the floor, Michelle, but I asked for point of parliamentary procedure.
I understand there was a state audit done, and I know that we were told that it was on such and such a day and so forth. And I guess there were a couple, 2 or 3 school board members there. My question is, why aren't these things recorded? Why are we, I know our committee meetings aren't recorded. I know this audit, this state audit thing was not recorded. In other words, if you don't see it at that moment, you're never going to know what happens. You don't have any access. Can you tell me why this stuff isn't being recorded so that somebody can see it at a different time?
I think you'd have to maybe reach out to the state auditors as to why they're not recording it. It was their meeting.
Just as a reminder, Mrs. Williams, please.
Yes.
It was called a post-audit verbal presentation. It's actually not finalized yet. The folks who did it have to present it to their bosses for final approval. And then a written report comes out, which would then become a public document.
Do you know when we'll get that, David? Will we get that?
Well, he made an estimate, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but there is a change in administration, so they expected a little bit of delay. Does anyone remember, was it 30 days, 60 days?
He thought that it could be as long as 60 days. He didn't want to give a definite response to that just because of the changeover.
That is correct.
Okay, and I have a second question. Why aren't our committee meetings recorded so that, we advertise them, they're public, they're not recorded. And even other members of the board can't look at them and see what it is that was said in those meetings. Can you tell me why this stuff isn't recorded for public viewing? No? No answer?
Are you talking about a public committee meeting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if it's advertised, it should be open to the public for Zoom.
It is, David. If it's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, not everybody's home to sit there and watch it. They might want to see it at a different time so that they know what's going on. This is important stuff. But they're seeing, we even had to fight to get classes recorded that would be available. And I guess I'm asking for the same thing. Why can't these things be accessed at a later time? They're public.
I don't know the technology aspects of that. We'd have to have a comment on that. But the ability to record it and make it public, or whether it's going to be.
So Dr.
that's good.
Pike, I know for a couple of these things, for the committee meetings, it depends on what type of a Zoom membership you have. And if it's a committee member setting up the Zoom meeting, you can have a free membership. Some you can't record, some you can't. I'm sure the school has a Zoom subscription that can record and do those things, but that would mean that Mr. Pushkar or Mr. Masha has to be at each one of those meetings, I'm assuming.
Or you hold them in a place where it can be done, right, Christy?
Correct.
We don't have a place where that can be done. We don't have a videographer. And then is this
Bringing that up,
videographer?
can we be sure that that's on the discussion meeting for next week, going back to live meetings in person? Because I think we tabled it from our last meeting.
Hey, Christy, it's you and me on the live meetings. In your dreams.
Go out on your front porch with your laptop, invite your neighbors, you'll have your public meeting.
Are we ready for a motion for adjournment?
Yes, please.
I make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Miss,
Oh, sorry.
no, I was going to try to get Mr. Polakowski, but can you hang on,
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski, for a second?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good night.
You want to wait till I stop the recording?
Yes.